The first time Ben Carter saw her, she was standing outside a private school in a plain gray coat, arguing with a driver who kept calling her ma'am like she was someone important. "Please go," she said quietly. "I can walk the rest of the way." Ben only noticed because his 7-year-old son, Ali, had dropped his lunchbox in a puddle right in front of her. "Oh no," Ali whispered. Staring at the soggy bag, Ben rushed over. Already late for work, already tired, already carrying too much in his mind. "It's okay, buddy. We'll fix it." The woman bent down before Ben could stop her. She picked up the lunchbox, wiped it with tissues from her purse, and smiled at Ali. "Still usable," she said. Ali looked at her like she had just saved his whole day. "Thank you." Ben nodded. "Thanks. We're having one of those mornings." She gave a small smile. "I think I am too." Ben didn't know who she was. To him, she looked like any other parent trying to survive the school rush. Tired eyes, simple clothes, hair tied back in a loose ponytail. No makeup, no signs of luxury, nothing that suggested she was Elena Heckel, CEO of one of the biggest property development companies in the city. Ben was 38, a single dad with 2 kids, 7, and Ruby, 11. His wife, Claire, had died 3 years earlier after a sudden illness. Since then, his life had become a careful balancing act of school runs, grocery budgets, packed lunches, overtime shifts, laundry piles, tears at bedtime, and trying not to let the kids see when he was scared. He worked as a building maintenance supervisor at a downtown office complex. It paid the bills, but only just. Their apartment was small, their car was old, and every month felt like a race against one unexpected expense. That morning, Ruby had a permission slip due for a school trip. Ollie needed new shoes because his toes were pushing against the front, and Ben had a reminder on his phone that rent was due in 4 days. He had gotten used to doing silent math in his head everywhere he went. After dropping the kids off, he headed to work. Around noon, he got called upstairs to one of the executive floors because a coffee machine had leaked and damaged part of the carpet in a private meeting room. When he walked in carrying his toolbox, P. Rose, the same woman from outside the school, was standing by the window, listening to 3 people in expensive suits. One of them turned to Ben and said, "Fix this quickly. Miss Hale has another meeting at 1. "Miss Hale." Ben looked at her. She looked back at him and gave the faintest, almost embarrassed smile. That evening, he picked the kids up and found a note in Ruby's backpack about the school's community reading program. Parents were invited to volunteer. Ben wanted to help, but the sign-up time was during his shift. At dinner, Ruby pushed peas around her plate. "Dad, everyone else's parent comes to these things." Ben stopped chewing. "I know you always say you'll try." He felt the sting in that because she was right. He did always say he'd try, and sometimes trying still wasn't enough. Ali looked between them nervously. "It's okay, Dad." That made Ben feel even worse. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Ben sat alone at the kitchen table looking at bills, permission slips, and the school note. He covered his face with both hands. He wasn't failing in a dramatic way. He was failing in the quiet way that single parents often do, missing small things. Arriving late, forgetting forms, stretching money, smiling when he was exhausted. The next afternoon, he saw Alina again at school pickup. This time, she was sitting alone on a bench while children ran around the playground. "You work in my building," she said when he walked by, "and you saved my son's lunchbox." He replied. That made her laugh softly. He sat on the other end of the bench. "You have kids there?" She shook her head. "No, my company funds a literacy program here. I came to review it, but I think the principal assumed I wanted a full tour." Ben smiled. "That sounds about right." They talked for 10 minutes. Then 20. It was easy. Strange, but easy. She asked about his children. He told her about Ruby's stubbornness and Ali's habit of asking deep questions at the worst times. She listened in a way that made him feel like his small life mattered. Then she asked, "Do you ever get tired of being needed all the time?" Ben gave a tired laugh. "Every day. And still do it. What choice do I have?" She looked away for a moment. "Maybe that's why I admire parents." Before he could ask what she meant, a black car pulled up near the school gate. The same driver stepped out and opened the door. Elena's face changed. She stood quickly. "I should go." Ben looked from her to the car. "You really are important, huh?" She gave him a sad smile. "Not in the way people think." And then she left. That night, Ben searched her name online after the kids went to sleep. Elena Hale, CEO, inherited the company after her father's death. Estimated net worth in the tens of millions. Business magazines called her brilliant, cold, and untouchable. Ben stared at the screen in disbelief. Then he remembered. The woman who had knelt in a puddle to help a little boy save his lunchbox. Something didn't match. And for the first time in a long while, Ben went to bed thinking about something other than bills. Over the next few weeks, Ben kept running into Alina. Sometimes at the school, sometimes in the building where he worked, once at a small bookstore on a Saturday where she stood in the children's section holding a copy of Charlotte's Web. "You read that?" Ben asked. She looked almost caught. "I buy books I wish someone had read to me." That stayed with him. They started talking more often, not in some rushed, magical way, in a slow, careful way. like two people who had both learned that life could change without warning. She never acted like she was above him. In fact, it was almost the opposite. She seemed most comfortable when no one knew who she was. One rainy evening, Ben missed his bus after work and found Alina waiting in the lobby for her. "Driver, I can drop you home," she offered up. "Don't think my neighborhood is CEO material," he joked. She looked at him seriously. "Maybe I'm tired of CEO material." He hesitated, then accepted. When they reached his apartment building, Elena looked up at the peeling paint near the stairs and the flickering hallway light. Ben suddenly saw the place through her eyes and felt embarrassed. "Thanks," he said quickly, reaching for the door. But from the back seat, Ollie's little drawing folder slid out from under Ben's bag. Papers scattered near Elena's feet. She bent to pick them up. Crayon sketches. One of Ben with giant arms. One of Ruby with a book. One labeled "Our Family" with a bright yellow sun in the corner. Elena stared at them longer than expected. "They're beautiful," she said quietly. Ben smiled. "To me, yes." She looked at him, and for a moment there was something fragile in her face. "You're lucky." Ben almost laughed at that. Lucky. He was one broken water heater away from disaster. He had not bought new shoes for himself in 2 years. He sometimes skipped meals without telling the kids so they could have more, but he understood what she meant. A few days later, Elena came to the school's reading day. To Ben's surprise, she sat on the floor with a group of children and read in funny voices until they laughed. Ali sat right next to her. Even Ruby, who usually kept her distance from strangers, smiled. Afterward, the four of them got sandwiches from a nearby cafe. Ruby studied Elena closely. Dad doesn't usually bring people around. Ben nearly choked on his drink. Ruby Elena smiled. "That's okay. You're protective." "That's a good thing," Ali asked. "Are you rich?" Ben shut his eyes for half a second. But Elena answered calmly. "Yes." Ali nodded as if that settled nothing. "Do you have a trampoline?" She laughed. A real laugh this time. "No." "Then maybe not that rich." Even Ruby smiled. For the first time in years, Ben felt something close to hope. Not because of money, not because of fantasy, but because Elena fit into the space around his children without forcing herself into it. Then life did what life often does. It tested everything. Ben's landlord called to say the building was being sold and rent would increase in 2 months. Not by a little, by enough to make staying impossible. That same week, Ruby's school trip deadline passed because Ben forgot to send the payment. She didn't yell. She just folded the paper and said, "It's okay," in the same quiet voice Claire used to use when she was disappointed. That hurt more than anger. Then Ali got sick. A chest infection. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to keep Ben up 3 nights in a row, balancing medicine, work calls, and fear. Ben missed shifts. His supervisor warned him they needed reliability. On the 4th evening, Elena called. "You sound exhausted." Ben sat on the kitchen floor, back against a cabinet, while Ollie slept on the couch and Ruby pretended to do homework at the table. "I'm fine," he said. She was quiet. "That usually means you're not." Something in him cracked. Not loudly. Just enough. "The rent is going up. Ruby thinks I forgot her because I missed another school thing. Ollie's sick. Work's upset. I'm trying, Elena. I really am trying." "I know," she said softly. "No, you don't." He instantly regretted the sharpness in his voice. But the words kept coming. "You can't know what it's like to wonder which bill gets paid first." Silence, then she said, very gently, "You're right. I don't know that part." Ben closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." She didn't sound offended. She sounded sad. "Can I help?" He looked around his small kitchen. Help. It was the one thing he needed, and the one thing he could not bear. "No," he said. "If this becomes charity, I can't do it." The next day, Elena came by with soup for Ollie and a puzzle book for Ruby. Nothing expensive. Nothing flashy. Still, Ben kept his distance. A week later, he found out why. An article appeared online with photos of Elena leaving his apartment building. The headline hinted at a secret relationship between the billionaire CEO and a building worker. The comments were cruel. Some mocked him. Some accused him of using her. Others accused her of chasing an ordinary life for attention. At work, people stared at school. 2 mothers whispered while Ben stood nearby. Ruby saw it on another kid's phone. That night, she asked, "Are people making fun of us because of your friend?" Ben sat on the edge of her bed, stunned. "Do you want me to stop seeing her?" Ruby looked down at her blanket. "I don't know. I just don't want people treating us like we're some weird story." In the living room, Elena stood near the door, having arrived just in time to hear enough. "I should go," she said. Ben stepped toward her. "Elena," she shook her head. Her eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady. "This is what money does. It turns everything into noise." He followed her into the hallway. "This isn't your fault." She gave a broken laugh. "My whole life. People wanted my money, my name, or the version of me they could show off. I thought if I stayed simple, stayed quiet, stayed away from all of it, maybe I could feel normal. But I can't even stand near someone decent without their life getting hit." Ben felt helpless watching her try so hard not to cry. Then she said the one thing that explained everything. "I hate being rich, Ben, not because money is evil, but because ever since I was a child, it has kept love from feeling safe." He didn't know what to say. She took a step back. Your kids need peace. I won't be the reason they lose it. And then she left. Ben stood in the hallway long after the elevator doors closed. Inside, he could hear Ali coughing in his sleep in Ruby's room. The light clicked off. And in that heavy silence, Ben realized that losing Elena hurt not because she was wealthy or impressive. It hurt because she had understood the lonely parts of him that he never showed anyone. The next morning, he found Ruby's unsigned school trip note in the trash. That was the most emotional moment of all. Not the headlines, not the gossip, not even Elena leaving. It was seeing the quiet ways his hard life was shrinking his children's childhood and knowing he had to decide what kind of man and what kind of father he was going to be next. Ben made two decisions that morning. First, he took an extra shift he had been avoiding because it meant less sleep. Second, he sold the only valuable thing he still owned from before Claire died, his old motorcycle, the one he had promised himself he would fix one day when life got easier. Life had not gotten easier, but Ruby was going on that trip when he handed her the signed slip and the money. She looked confused. You got it. Ben smiled. You're going? Her face changed slowly, from surprise to relief to something softer. She hugged him hard. Thank you, Dad. That hug gave him courage. That evening, he called Elena and asked if they could meet somewhere quiet. They met in a public park near the river, just before sunset. No driver, no assistants, no black car, just Elena in a simple sweater, hands tucked into her pockets. Ben didn't waste time. I was wrong the other night. She looked at him but said nothing. I told myself I was protecting my dignity. Maybe part of me was, but part of me was also scared. Not of your money, of what people would say, of not measuring up, of needing someone. Elena's eyes lowered. He continued. I can't let gossip decide my life. My kids already lost enough. I won't teach them to walk away from good people just because life gets messy. She swallowed hard. Ben, being with me won't be simple. I know people will talk, they already do. My world is complicated. He gave a tired smile. So is mine. For the first time in days, she smiled back. Then she asked, what if your children get hurt because of me? Ben answered honestly. Then we protect them together. But don't decide for us what we can survive. Elena's eyes filled with tears. No one has ever said together to me and meant it. He took a step closer. I do. That was the turning point. Not a grand speech, not a dramatic rescue, just two adults choosing honesty over fear. From there, things didn't suddenly become perfect. They became real. Ben set boundaries. The kids came first. Their home life stayed grounded. No expensive gifts, no showing off, no media photos. Elena respected every rule without question. She started coming over for ordinary evenings, homework at the kitchen table, pasta dinners, board games, helping Ollie build a cardboard rocket, listening to Ruby talk about books for 20 straight minutes one night. Ruby asked Elena, why do you always wear simple clothes if you're rich? Ben nearly told her not to ask, but Elena answered with surprising openness, because I spent years wearing what other people expected. I got tired of feeling like a display. Ruby considered that. That sounds lonely. Elena nodded. It was. Ruby reached for another slice of garlic bread and said, you can be normal here. Elena laughed through tears. At work, Ben kept pushing forward. He spoke to a manager in another department about a facilities coordinator opening. It offered better hours and slightly better pay. He almost didn't apply, thinking he wasn't polished enough. Elena encouraged him, but carefully. Not by using connections, not by pulling strings, just by saying, you hold a whole family together every day. You can handle an interview. He got the job on his own. It didn't solve everything, but it changed enough. Better schedule, better pay, more evenings at home. A month later, Ben and the kids had to move to a more affordable apartment across town. It was smaller, but cleaner, brighter, and closer to Ruby's school. Elena showed up on moving day in jeans, carrying boxes and labeling kitchen items with Ollie's messy handwriting. At one point, Ben stopped in the doorway and looked at her laughing with his children on the floor, surrounded by tape and half-packed dishes. For a second, Claire crossed his mind, not with guilt, but with peace. He had loved once. He had lost deeply, and somehow life had still found a way to place warmth back into his home. That night, after the kids fell asleep on blankets in the new apartment, Ben and Elena sat on the floor against the wall, eating cheap takeout from paper boxes. No chandelier, Elena said, looking around the plain room. No staff, Ben replied. No headlines. Give it time. She laughed, then turned serious. You know what I realized? I never hated being rich because of the money itself. I hated what came with it. The pressure, the pretending, the fear that people only saw my life, not me. Ben looked at her quietly. And your kids, she said, they don't care about any of that. Ali cares if I can do silly voices. Ruby cares if I answer her honestly. You care if I show up. Ben nodded. That's all we ever wanted from anyone. She leaned her head lightly on his shoulder. I think that's the first time I've felt safe in years. Months passed, the gossip faded because gossip always moves on. Ruby went on her trip and brought back a postcard for Elena. Ali's cough disappeared, but his endless questions returned. Ben settled into his new role at work, and Alina quietly made changes in her own company, cutting wasteful executive spending, funding more school and family support programs, and setting stricter privacy boundaries. Around her personal life, she didn't stop being a CEO, she just stopped living like money had to control every part of her. One Sunday afternoon, the five of them, Ben, Alina, Ruby, Ali, and even Ben's grief in its softer form, sat in the park eating ice cream. Ali looked up and asked, "Dad, are we rich now?" Ben smiled. "No, buddy," Ali shrugged. "Feels like it." Ben looked at Alina. She smiled back with tears shining in her eyes. And in that simple moment, both of them understood the same truth. Richness had never been about what was in a bank account. It was about who sat beside you when life was hard.